Exchange. One particular Sabbath, Jesus was invited to dinner with an important Pharisee, where the other guests were watching Jesus' every move. Jesus noticed a man whose legs were terribly swollen. He asked the Pharisees and teachers of the law who were all around him, "Is it right to heal on the Sabbath?" Nobody answered. So Jesus took the man's hand, healed him of his illness, and sent him home. Everyone watched in silence. "Tell me," Jesus asked, turning to the guests in the room, "if your son or even your ox fell in a well on the Sabbath, wouldn't you pull them out straight away?" But still no one said a word. Jesus had also noted how, as the guests arrived, they looked around for the best seats in the room. So he said to them, "Next time you go to a wedding, don't head for the seats at the top table, for they may be for someone else who has yet to arrive, and what will happen if they do? The host will have to ask you to vacate the seats, and this will embarrass both you and your host. And by then there will only be the worst seats left in the far corner of the room. Instead, when you arrive, go and sit on the far table, in the lowest place. And then the host will come and find you and say, 'Here is a better seat,' and you will be honoured in front of everyone. If you seek to put yourself above other people, you will be humbled. But those who are humble will be honoured." Then Jesus turned to the Pharisee who had invited him to dinner and said, "When you give a dinner, don't just invite friends and family and the important people in the community. We all know that if you do, they will invite you back in turn. You scratch their backs and they scratch yours. No, it is far better to invite the poor, the lame, the blind, and the least in the eyes of society, for they cannot repay you like for like. But your Father in heaven will bless and reward you at the end of days." One of the guests at the table, hearing this, said, "The greatest blessing of all will be the banquet in God's kingdom." To which Jesus responded with this story. A rich king once gave a great banquet in honour of his son and invited many guests. When all was ready, he sent his servants to tell the guests, "Come now, all is prepared." But one guest after another began to make excuses. One said, "I must go and tend my fields." Another, "I must see to my oxen." And another, "I am newly married and therefore otherwise preoccupied." Some even attacked or drove away the servants. When the servants told the king what had happened, he was angry, and told his servants to go out and invite anyone they could find. Rich, poor, blind, lame, they were all welcome. After they had done this, there were still some empty places at the table, so the king sent them out a second time, until every seat was taken. There was no longer any space or welcome for those he had first invited. When the king finally came to meet his guests, he saw that one of them had not bothered to smarten himself up in any way, and when he couldn't explain why he hadn't done so, the king had him escorted outside, and the gates were closed. Not all who are invited appreciate the gift they are given. The pompous and self-righteous, who mistake entitlement for grace, whose hearts are slave to public recognition and seek what they perceive as their appointed place, are deaf to heaven's invitation to the wedding of the Lamb, and look instead to worldly wealth and all the schemes of mammon and of man. So heaven's place is given to the weakest and the poor, the sick, the lame and blinded who lie beyond the temple's door. And so the first and last exchange places at the feast. the poorest for the richest, and the greatest for the least.